Добрый день, привет, всем привет, меня зовут Matt Thompson, and you are here again for another English You Can Use lesson, our weekly lesson that started a few months ago when all of our programs here at the American Consulate in Yekaterinburg had to move from in person to online. So it's good to see all of you. Я очень рад вас видеть. If you've been here before, you might see that I mix in Russian with English. I do speak Russian, but I know you came here to listen to English, not my bad Russian. So, say hello to me. I'm going to put some of you up on the screen. Let's see. We've got UCAT, Natalia, and other people here. Let's see. Dmitry, привет. So, take this off for a second. We have a great program for you today. We're going to talk a little grammar. We're going to talk about business interviews in the United States. We're going to talk about some different words you can use in the appropriate settings. And we're going to have a great discussion with our good friend and well-known and respected professor here in Yekaterinburg, Dmitry Pobedash. Dmitry, that's the Bulgarian version. Dmitry. So he'll join us in just a second. I'm going to put you guys up a few more up on the screen. Andre and Anna, please say hello. It's nice to see who's on the show. I can kind of do this at the same time, but it's like having four arms. You have to listen, you have to speak. It's not as easy as it looks. So, let's start with our presentation, which I'm going to put up here on the screen. Let's see. All right. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about is there's a little phrase that I used to get wrong in Russian all the time, and it was good luck. And I always screwed it up because there's some different ways. It doesn't translate exactly, I don't think, in Russian and English if you say good luck. Maybe Dmitry can kind of expand on that when we have him on. So I want to talk about 5 phrases you can say in English that you can use when you have friends and you want them to wish them well. Maybe you have friends overseas that you talk to online, and you didn't know exactly how you're supposed to say it. So let's start. Fingers crossed. I don't know how this works in Russian. I think they have a different, but fingers crossed. That means you're wishing them luck. You're hoping they do well. So there's a sentence there on the screen. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that you will win the match. And I left a word out. I didn't even edit my own. I want you to do well. I want you to do well. So remember that, fingers crossed. If you see someone do that, as you can see in the picture here, it's a positive thing. They're hoping you do well. Next one. Break a leg. This gets a lot of attention because it makes no sense. And I know there's a big story behind it and there's a reason, but this takes too long to get into. So just know if someone says break a leg, or you're watching a movie and the actor's about to go on stage and someone says, all right, break a leg. It's just an expression. They don't want them to actually slamat. Nog, I think that's how you do it in Russian. They don't want you to really do that. It just means good luck. You're going to do great. Let's see. Another one. Knock 'em dead. Sounds kind of bad, right? Knock 'em dead. Dead, is probably, if you're an intermediate speaker, dead is to die, not good. Knock 'em is to hit or push or something. But knock 'em dead means to go out there and do well. So you can see that guy on the screen. He's a famous basketball coach in the United States at Duke University. I can imagine him say, go out there and knock 'em dead. Pass that test. Win that game. So that's a good one to use. It's really colloquial, especially the M. It's knock them dead, but knock 'em. Just knock them. Just take off the TH. And another one that sounds quite violent, but it doesn't mean it's not violent. Blow them away. There's a good sentence here. I'm sure you will blow them away with your talent and skills. That's something you would wish to somebody maybe before an interview or before a big test or some place where they're going to be judged or they have to compete for something. So another one, you could say blow them away, take off the TH again. It's totally acceptable. But if you want to know the words, blow them away. And this is just the generic, easy one. If you can't remember all these strange idiomatic phrases, just say best of luck or good luck. Best of luck to you and your team. Best of luck to you. It's a good way to sign off if you're talking with people online and you want to wish them well. Just say best of luck. It's really great. I'm going to put some people up here on. Svetlana from Parmesan. Let's say Viola, Yelena, who's saying hello to me? Rezeda, nice to see you. This is great. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see the same names over and over, and I hope when this is all done, we can see each other in person and talk. But in the meantime, this is pretty good. So let's go on to our next one. Common interview questions. And if this is the same as they do in Russia, then my apologies. But I know some of you at some point might go to the United States. You might want to interview for a job if you have a visa or you have the opportunity to work. And you might be nervous about how you're supposed to prepare. And so I want to be, if you already know this, great. But maybe if you don't, these are typically how many interviews in the US take place. First off, most interviews are a little less formal than maybe here in Europe and in Russia. And they'll start out with this question, why do you want this job? Why are you interested in this job? You need to be prepared to tell them why. And a little hint, and maybe you know this, but don't go into how it's going to help you. Tell them how you're going to help the company or that organization. Tell them what skills you have and why you think this is a good fit. You can say, well, I'm attracted to this type of work because I have these skills. That's really the key to that question. If you say, well, this is very good for my career to gain experience to do this, the person interviewing may say, well, that's great, but I'm not in charge of your career. Tell us what you can do for us. So that might be just personal preference, but I think that's a cultural value that Americans might have when they're interviewing you. We see some hello to a few more people. Konstantin, Yedim, nice to see you guys. Let's go to the next question. What are your greatest strengths? You really need to be prepared to know what you're good at. I know it's maybe a little uncomfortable do you know this word brag? That means to say good things about yourself. But you have to be able to do it. You have to say, I am an excellent organizer. I am extremely good at giving presentations. I have an easy way of talking with people. People tell me, they communicate well with me. So have at least a few in mind, like 3, to be able to tell the person interviewing you that you're ready to take this job. And next, the trap question. What are your greatest weaknesses? Does everybody know a word? So we got strengths, which is, it's not quite this, but maybe Dmitry's probably watching, but it's not nedostatki и преимущества. That's advantages and disadvantages, but it's like what you're good at and what you're not good at. And this is a little bit of a trap question that you don't want to go on and on about how bad you are at something. Let me tell you how terrible I am at writing. You want to be able to be honest with them and say, I think I need to do this better. I have little experience in this part of my job, but I'm trying to work on it. The funny one you can do, which I don't recommend, but this is a joke. You go in and they say, "What are your greatest weaknesses?" And you say, "I work too hard, I care too much, and I don't want too much money." That will come off as very insincere. And they say, "Well, my greatest strengths are my weaknesses." That's the flip. Don't do that. Just be honest and say, I wanted to get better at this, but I haven't got that training or I haven't had that experience yet, but I really hope this job will help me with that. So I hope that helps with that question. It's a hard one. And then lastly, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? Americans love to ask that question, and that is a hard one. We don't even know what we're going to be doing in 6 months. But you need to see, they want to see what do you have plans for in the future? Is this job you're interviewing for, are you going to just take it and then go to the next place in a year? Where do you see yourself? Do you want to be a part of this organization or this company for a long time? And that's a very personal question, and you have to figure out how to answer it. But it's good to say, I've always dreamed of being a manager, or I've always dreamed of having my own business in this field, or you can say, I've always wanted just to be part of a great company like this. And I see myself trying to work up to the upper levels because I really think I believe in your mission and what you do. So that is my job advice. I've held a lot of jobs before this job with the consulate. I was an English teacher overseas. I was a journalist for 3 years at a newspaper. I was a manager, a team manager, administrator at a university for a sports team. And then I became a diplomat. So I do have experience talking and taking interviews because I've changed jobs a lot. All right. So let's go to our little grammar session. Grammar is terrible, I know. I'll use a crude phrase, it sucks. That's not a nice thing to say, but it does. But it's necessary. So even if you're an expert and an advanced speaker, or if you're an intermediate, I'm sure you sometimes mess these things up, like I do with v, na, s, is. I do it all the time in Russian, and my teacher always hits me right over the knuckles. No, v, na, it's not na. Joking, she never touches me, she never hits me. So, simple rule, how to use on. On is when something is touching something, a surface, it's on something. 95% of the time, this is when you use on. So there you see you have 4 examples on the screen. The book is on the table. Na. He is sitting on the floor. Now, there's the 2 examples below. She has a blue dress on. The dress is on her. Does that make sense? That's kind of logically makes sense. So if you're talking about clothing, it's on you. I have a shirt on right now. Then the last one is a little bit a stretch. I saw it on the internet, or I saw it on the television. It's saying the information is on the surface of the television or on the internet. You just have to go with me on the logic. It's going to be on all the time. All right? And I'm going to put Natalia, she puts this little comment up. It would be interesting to know the phrases for the interview when we are applying for an American visa. Well, if we have one of my colleagues on, he can talk to you about that. And we have our guest from Viola from U.S. Embassy in Belarus. Privyet. Nice to see from you. All right. So let's move on to at. At. Another hard one, but I'll make it as simple as possible. At describes a general place or a location. Not a specific place, but a general place. So I have a typo there. I live at this address. I was at the park yesterday. We don't know exactly in the park, but you were at the park somewhere. meet me at 2 p.m. Time will get at. Even though it's a specific time, it's a general time, general place. And then the last one, she was at the club dancing all night. Makes sense? Pretty simple. She was at the club. Let's go to the last one. In. In describes something inside a barrier or border. So you have to be внутри. На улице внутри. I live in the United States. She stayed in the apartment all day. So we know it's inside. I waited in line for an hour. So a line, очередь, is in. And then the last one you'll see is the same example as I wrote before. She was in the club dancing all night. So the in the club makes you think she was inside. At the club is more of a general place. Does that make sense? Both are correct, and you could use them interchangeably with no problem with the listener understanding what you're trying to say. Okay? Whew. Okay, we made it through the grammar. I hope it didn't kill you. I hope it wasn't too bad. But now I get to introduce I got to get my first slide. Comments and questions. Send me your comments and questions right now if you want, or leave them in the comments section after this program. I will personally answer them, and if it's a grammar question or an idiom question, I'll be happy to help you. С удовольствием, I will help you. So, our guest today is, and we're right on time, Dmitry Pobedash. He is a professor at Ural Federal University. He's associate professor, and he's worked in American Studies. He has worked in the U.S., as you see also here on the screen. He's a Fulbright Scholar in 2012 to 2013 at Wayne State University, which is in the big city of Wayne, Nebraska. If you don't know where Nebraska is right now, after this program, just go type it into your Google search and find out where it is. It's right in the middle of the United States. He's also a well-regarded interpreter, and he works with us when we have several big meetings, and he also does interpretation for many, many other people. So I'm going to get on to, there you are. Can you say hello?
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and ask me about Nebraska, please. Well, that's one of my missions in life, to promote the beautiful state of Nebraska.
We'll get to that. I want people to know more about your experience there. First, I just wanted to know, I've seen you interpret, and you are able to capture so many little details from English to Russian. When did you start studying English? And how did that become a passion of yours?
That's a funny story. I served in the army as a private for 2 years, and we had a lot of guard duty. And you have like 8 hours of doing nothing, and you cannot sleep. So I started reading a book for the 5th grade, Those Against the Barons, something about Robin Hood. And I read it aloud to my mates, and decided that I knew English. Well, it was written in kind of English for the 5th graders. And after that, it took me 3 years to teach myself English enough to enter the university, foreign language department. So I started basically studying English when I was 23.
Wow, that's quite late for a lot of people doing a foreign language. Usually it helps when you start when you're 9 or 10 and then on. But wow, that is amazing. So that passion has affected your career and your trajectory in your academic career. And I'm kind of curious, what strategies did you have to pick up the language over several years? There are many people who study English for 5 years and they can barely say very little. And it's not because they're not good learners, it's just very hard.
Learning by heart, like writing out sentences, I liked, or writing out sentences which were very useful for, grammar points or some other things, and just learning them by heart. And right now I've got those 500 sentences, and I actually try to shove it down the throats of my students. And they're very reluctant to study them. But these are very good sentences. Like, you don't seem to understand me. Very idiomatic. Not, I think you may not, and no, you don't seem to understand me.
So
See what
sometimes there's no way around it. It's just hard work of just, you got to learn the content.
there are no royal ways to studying anything.
Good point. So later in 2000, I guess it's now been almost 10 years or 8 years, I guess. You went to the United States and you were a Fulbright scholar. I will just tell everybody, Fulbright Scholarship Fellowship is the oldest exchange program the U.S. government has. It pays for scholars to go abroad, for Americans to go overseas, and for international scholars and students to come to the United States. And it was started by William Fulbright, correct? And he believed in that cross-cultural exchange, and especially at the academic level was very important for us to understand each other. Tell us a little bit about what you did at Wayne State and what you came away with from that experience.
I taught international relations, Russian-American relations, and then they asked me to teach a bit of a Russian language and some kind of appreciation of Russian culture. So it was absolutely brilliant, and we still keep in touch with my ex-students, and some of them actually picked up Russian and then transferred to another university where they had proper training in Russian. And some of them ruined their life forever. They turned into teachers of English as a second language.
Oh, wonderful. I'm always curious for the Fulbright students, people who go to the United States, what surprised you the most? I'm sure you did a lot of reading before you went. You kind of knew a lot about the United States, but what took you aback and said, wow, I didn't know this.
No. My first visit to the United States was the International Visitors Program, and it was back in 2003. So by the time I came to Nebraska, I was already an honorary citizen of Nebraska. And the first shock was actually in the Republic of South Africa. After that, nothing abroad was shocking enough. And Nebraska is really very different from the rest of the United States. It's a world in itself. And people are incredibly friendly, incredibly hospitable. You cannot walk anywhere, somebody will give you a lift. Everybody greets everyone. Everybody helps everyone. Mm-hmm. It's just like back to my homeland in Eastern Siberia, small towns where everybody knows everyone and everybody is ready to help.
Well, it's nice to hear. Nebraska's famous for corn, correct? The corn, mm-hmm. And lots of flat fields that go on and on. Not many people live in Nebraska.
Undulating hills, and farmers wave when you drive a car, and you greet everybody you meet on the road. You make this farmer's salute.
Oh, really? Like that?
Yeah, like you are driving and you're already tired of waving your head. You do
that. I knew some friends that lived in eastern Oregon, very rural, not many people live up there. And he and his wife had a little code, and he would say this, if you knew the person when they were driving, he'd say, hey. And if you didn't know him, he'd give him a 2. He'd say, that's a stranger, I don't know him, but I say hi. And if 1, I know them, I'm saying hi anyway. So I wanted to just talk briefly. I know you have to go very quickly, but you wrote an article in E1 recently to talk a little bit, to give Russian audiences some context and some understanding about the protests going on in the United States. I very much appreciated your views. But can you tell me a little bit about how your experience in just being 1 year in Nebraska, which is a pretty white state, rural state. It doesn't represent a lot of other states, but how that experience kind of informs you now when you look at the protests and what you see on the news.
Prior to that, I had lived and studied, well, it was kind of an internship in Monterey, California, and also traveled around the United States, including, for example, the Ole Miss University. Like, have been to Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, places very different from Nebraska. And Nebraska itself, yes, it is white. And besides, in the academic situation, people actually try to be very, not only polite, what would be the good description of that? Unbiased, impartial. People actually believe in human rights and promote human rights, but that's in an academic setting. But when you look at the local life, local communities, they are absolutely white, and that is why there is no tension with the blacks. But there were lots of tensions with African Americans in Omaha, Nebraska. Malcolm X is from Omaha, and recently a 17-year-old guy was killed in defense by a bar owner in Omaha, Nebraska. But when the local community borders another minority, then you can see that, yes, there is quite a tension. For example, with American Indians, there were pretty tense relations between them and the local whites. And as an outsider, I was not seen as a white American. I was seen as, well, like a friendly human being. So being an outsider helps you to notice things. Like, for example, you may notice racism here in Russia, although we as Russians may not notice quite a few terrible things.
Well, I think on that note, when you go abroad, because you don't have all the history and context, it's easier for you to sometimes see these things. But also,
Right.
when you're abroad, you can look back to your own country and say, oh, because you have something to compare it to. If you don't have anything to compare it with, it's much more difficult.
That's the whole point of the exchanges. We understand each other better and we understand ourselves better.
And was there one last thing before we go? How did you interpret how Americans see assembling and freedom of speech in that sense? There's been a lot of confusion with the news about people protesting. There's been violence, but there's been mostly it's been peaceful. What did you take away from just talking to people, how they value the First Amendment, which is part of the Constitution?
Freedom of speech is sacred, absolutely sacred, and you cannot shut people up. And if I go around saying, I don't know, whatever, he is an idiot, okay, I have the right to say that. And, peaceful assembly is also a very important thing. And interestingly, some of my students opposed the local police, said that the local police harassed them. They went from the bar in the city, in the town, back to the campus late at night, and the police car followed them. And next morning they made a scandal. They went to the sheriff and said, what was going on? Your beat is on a different route. Why did they follow us? We did not violate anything. We were just like free citizens. And with the freedom of expression, there was another conflict over there. When you have the freedom to express your political opinion, for example, putting flags, putting some slogans, posters on your lawn. But when some student went by a lawn and for political reasons he picked up one of those flags, that was basically seen as a crime because, it's my freedom of expression and it's my private property.
Yeah.
You have your own freedom of expression, but you have to respect my private property. So there was quite a lot of interesting stories out there.
Yeah, that's. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's always interesting to see when, especially Fulbrighters who get to have interaction with so many different people from around the community to the college campus, be able to hear those the good, the bad, and the ugly. The United States is not perfect and has a lot of issues that we're working through, but I think the majority of people want to try to make the situation better and want to want it to be calmer. So one last question based in English. What advice do you have for anybody who's learning English if they want to jump from that intermediate level to just get a little bit higher? What do you advise them?
You have to love it. You have to admire it. You have to find something you enjoy very much, and then there is no stopping you. You just find this something like, why do you do that? To get a job? No, just for kicks, baby. Just for kicks. When you find this zest, this, well, wonderful beauty of the language, and when you start enjoying it, well, the sky's the limit.
Oopsie. I have a little something going on in my headphones.
I hope it was not me blabbering away.
No, it's okay. If somebody called me on the phone, it triggered something else. Sorry. Well, thank you so much. It's 12:01. I know you have to go because you have a class.
Thank you.
Please, everyone, if you have questions, English questions, give me ideas for what you want to hear, what you want to learn about, and I'll be asking you soon about ways I can improve my Russian because it's something I want to get better at, and I've been kind of stuck at a certain level. So I'm wanting to get better so I can talk with more of you. Tolka по-русски. So thank you so much, Dmitry, and be safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And everybody, that's the end of our program. It's about 30 minutes. You can see these little squiggly things moving around. With Kontakti, Facebook, and YouTube here. Please subscribe. Let us know what you think. Give us some comments, feedback, thoughts, and we will write back to you. I'll see you next week at the same time, 11:30 Tuesday. I also want to tell you about that on Thursday, we will have a special guest on our program on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Chrissy Hayden. She used to work at the American Consulate. She was the public affairs officer, same job I had. And I'm going to put some comments up here. And she's going to do a cooking demonstration, interactive. So you can ask her, we're going to put the recipe up. You're going to be able to follow along. And she's going to make something called shakshuka, which is from the Middle East. She is currently the public affairs officer in Beirut. She's going to talk about her old memories of Yekaterinburg. It should be really fun. We want all of you to be there. I see everybody, Irina, Andre, Adam. Irina, Andre, you're not late. You can watch it later. This will be on for the future, forever. Thank you, Svetlana, Edgar, Vikrant. Thank you so much for all coming here, and we'll see you next week. Увидимся на следующей неделе. Did I say that correct? All right. Take care. Bye.